Dark monsters have long reigned supreme in the Yu-Gi-Oh TCG for decades. No other attribute has had as much support and the strongest monsters known to the game. Whether you're new to the game or been playing since GOAT format, it's impossible not to be familiar with the massive impact this attribute has left on the game, from normal monsters like Dark Magician to effect monsters like Ally of Justice Catastor. But which dark monster is recognized as the best of all time? And in today's video, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And at number 10, we have Chaos Dragon, the Chaotic Magical Dragon. This card saw play immediately out of the gate when it was introduced in the TCG set Rise of the Duelists. The generic Synchro monster allows players to excavate the top 5 cards of their deck, take one light or dark monster, and send the rest to the graveyard. A free +1 milling 5 cards belonging to the most substantial attributes in the current game was an automatic addition to any deck running light or dark monsters, like zombies or Dragon Link. To make this card even more powerful, you can remove a light and dark monster from your hand or graveyard to summon it when it's in the graveyard. All of those abilities on a dragon type monster were just asking for players to abuse this card non-stop, and abused it was. This card saw play heavily in almost every deck that benefited from having their cards in the graveyard. In Dragon Link, the card was fantastic for it, as nearly the entire deck was light or dark dragons, which helped cards who were benefited from being sent to the graveyard like Starlight Seafrit or White Dragon Wyvern Buster. Eldritch also used it as a way to send their spell and trap cards to the graveyard, like Elixir Scarlet Sanguine, who had a secondary effect that allowed you to banish them to set either a Golden Land spell or trap card directly from your deck, plus the added benefit of sending Eldritch the Golden Lord to the graveyard to use its effect, bring it to hand, and special summon it. Also, let's not leave out that you could still revive hand traps like DD Crow to have more advantage to use when your opponent goes second. This card even saw play in decks without cards that were light or dark base, as long as the deck contained cards, whether monsters, spells, or traps, that had effects that activated in the graveyard. This card was used as a catalyst to continue combos and set up dangerous boards and plays like the current Punk combos at Master Duel, one of the few places this card is still legal. With a single summon of Zia Min, you can go into Chaos Dragon, bring back Foxy Toon with Deer Notes effect, go into the Zombie Vampire, allowing you to mill up to 9 cards, and all without a normal summon if you used Emergency Teleport to bring out Zia Min. And then if you milled a Shinobi Necro on any of those 9 cards, you get a free level 10 Synchro like Barone on top of all that. And its combos were even more deadly when Halki Firebrax was allowed to be part of its arsenal. This card joined the ban list in late 2022 and has no chance of returning to the game in the TCG, subsequently showing that this card belongs in this list as one of the greatest dark monsters of all time. However, just being a generic level 8 that can enable a lot of mills isn't quite enough to take a higher spot on this list. And sliding in at number 9, we have Dark Magician of Chaos. As one of the forefathers of the ban list, Dark Magician of Chaos is recognized as one of the most powerful cards in the GOAT era of Yu-Gi-Oh! It allowed you to grab a spell card from your graveyard back to your hand when it was normal or special summon, letting you grab a wide range of spells like Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, or Pot of Greed. And when it destroyed a monster by battle, that monster would be removed from play. This card was so powerful because of its ability to set up FTKs. It had a combo that involved Mass Driver, or Cannon Soldier, Dimension Fusion, and Spell Economics that would make an endless loop of being able to tribute Dark Magician of Chaos with Cannon Soldier or Mass Driver, and then use Dimensional Fusion for free due to Spell Economics to allow you to play spells without having to pay life points, and bring back Dark Magician of Chaos due to Dark Magician of Chaos being banished whenever it leaves the field. You can continue the cycle until your opponent's life points became 0. It was also used in the Troop Dupe Mill decks to bring back Metamorphosis to use itself to go into Cyber Twin Dragon for easy OTKs with the 3 1900 card troopers and limiter removal. These combos would be the most consistent FTKs and OTKs until Dark Magician of Chaos was banned for its sins in 2008. The card received an errata to its effect while banned. You could still recover a spell card from your graveyard when it was summoned. However, you could only get it back during the end phase of the turn that it was summoned, ending the card's constant cycle of FTK abuse. It was then unbanned in April of 2016. This card showed the power of unconditional access to spell cards in your graveyard. Even today, getting back spells from the graveyard requires a vast resource sink that most people don't even bother trying to recover spells from the graveyard anymore. The card may be weak by today's standards, but that's only because of its errata. If it was still the same as it once was and was legal for play, you can guarantee it would see play, even if not as much as it did in the past. It terrorized its format during its time, just not as much as our number 8 pick. And at number 8, we have Dark Armed Dragon, the iconic Dark Dragon that ran rampant in the early GX era. It had 2800 attack and 1000 defense. It can't be normal summoned or set and can only be special summoned by having exactly 3 dark monsters in your graveyard. You can also banish a dark monster from your graveyard to destroy any one card in the field. This card's requirements were as easy as the set it came out from, Phantom of Chaos, was loaded with generic dark support, like Armageddon Knight and Dark Grapher. The card also saw play in Lightsworns and a unique deck called Twilight, where you would fuel the graveyard with light and dark monsters and then drop boss monsters like Dark-Armed Dragon and Judgment Dragon. It made an even more significant impact when Duelist Genesis came out and Synchro support was made. Teledad could use cards like Plague Spreader Zombie and Krebons as they were level 2 tuners. They're easily searchable through the deck as you would fetch Plague Spreader with either Dark Refer or Armageddonite. Krebons was searched off of Emergency Teleport, a quick play spell that would grab it from your hand or deck and then special summon it. You could then use either with Destiny Hero Malicious to make a level 8 Synchro while manipulating your graveyard to have exactly 3 dark monsters to drop down Dark-Armed Dragon. This card's ability to pop any card in the field wasn't once per turn either. You could use it with as many dark monsters in your graveyard as you wanted, drop some more dark monsters, and then use those to completely wipe your opponent's board and leave them with nothing. This led to Dark-Armed becoming semi-limited in 2008, limited in 2009, semi-limited again in 2019, and then fully off the leash in 2020. The card doesn't see any play as of late due to the quickness of the game and its strict summoning conditions. Though its ability to pop a card in the field isn't once per turn and limitless as long as you have graveyard fodder for its effect, it doesn't give you any advantage if you go first. Targeting effects aren't as powerful anymore in the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh, as many monsters can simply negate Dark-Armed Dragon's effect or her protection from being destroyed. Overall, Dark-Armed Dragon's reign was frightening in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh, and it was a fantastic boss monster in Teledad when spell speed 1 cards were strong with the priority rule still in effect. And at number 7, we have Guardragon Agrapain. This card was a Link 2 Dragon monster that could let you special summon any Dragon monster from your extra deck to a zone 2 or more Link monsters we're pointing to. The first thing you would notice about this effect is that there's no restriction on what could be brought out of the extra deck. This card was a free summon of any Dragon type extra deck monster, regardless of level, type, or attack power. This card was usually a deadly combo when used with Guardragon Pitsy and Guardragon LP, who is also on the Forbidden list. This fatal trio allowed you to get almost any Dragon type monster to your side of the field, and were the main reasons Dragon Link was a force in the TCG community. Free access to almost every monster and one of the most supported monster types in the game proved to be cataclysmic, as extra deck dragons like Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon and Red Dragon Arcane Abyss were easily accessible just by link summoning Guardragon Agrapain, who was no more than a Link 2 with a laughable summoning restriction and an almost effortless requirement for its link materials. Making a card that can bring out monsters from the extra deck for free is one thing. Making a card that can special summon any extra deck monster and bypass the requirements, whether it be a Synchro, Fusion, Link Pendulum, or XC summoning, is downright criminal. Let's also add that the monsters you summoned didn't have downside to being brought to the field. No being destroyed at the end of your turn, no its effects are negated, you just got rewarded with a free extra deck monster for chump change. You may have also noticed that it only requires you to summon the extra deck monster to any zone on your side of the field that 2 link monsters are pointing to. It doesn't have to be any of its own zones that it's pointing to. This means you had more room to combo with your cards Guardragon Pitsy and LP to abuse cards like Saryuja Skuldred and loop cards like Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon from your graveyard before using Agrapain to establish a board of FA Dawn Dragster and Red Dragon Arcane Abyss. When the 2019 Forbidden list came around, people were not surprised to see Agrapain on that list. Monsters that can do this never and shouldn't last long in the TCG, and our number 6 choice also knows this pretty well. And at number 6, we have Predaplant Verde Anaconda. This was initially meant to be an excellent support for fusion decks, and most of all, the Predaplant archetype ended up being one of the most powerful fusion support monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! With its ability to become any fusion or polymerization normal/quick play spell, this card enabled strong end boards and access to fusion monsters most decks wouldn't have access to. This card's effect also bypassed most restrictions on the spell card that it became, as it allows you to play as fusion spells and monsters like Red Eyes Fusion and Red Eyes Dragoon, who became staples in the meta. This card only needed 2 effect monsters to be summoned, making it accessible in almost every deck. It was a significant reason why it was banned in 2022. It has no chance of being brought back with the recent flood of powerful fusion monsters available to players, like Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer and Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Fusion monsters were the first monsters to be used in the extra deck, but they weren't quite as strong back in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! As they are now, due to their overly specific requirements and needing a fusion spell card to bring them out. Now in 2023, we have multiple fusion spells and archetypes that are specifically built to make numerous fusions on a per turn basis, like Branded Despia, Hero, or Tearlaments. Though it should be noted, Tear was probably the only fusion archetype that didn't use Verte. Factor in that it only takes 2 effect monsters to make Verte, and having this card roam around would have been a mistake. A generic Link monster allowed you to get a fusion monster for free and bypass restrictions when using certain fusion spells like Red Eyes Fusion is just too dangerous to keep in the format. The only notable downside to playing Predaplant Verde Anaconda was the inclusion of plain Garnet cards, causing you to have cards you couldn't use until you made Verde Anaconda, or just having a potential chance of the cards being stuck in your hand. It was the right decision to shut this card down. The next card on this list doesn't have to worry about that happening to it anytime soon though. And at number 5, we have Accesscode Talker. This popular Cyberslink 4 has been a powerful force in the TCG. This card is great for ending games, with its ability to boost its attack by targeting a link monster to use its materials and gain 1000 attack equal to that link monster's rating. This can pretty easily clear out the remaining life points of your opponent, as this monster's attack could potentially pass 4000 very easily. The card also lets you banish a link monster from your graveyard to destroy a card your opponent controls. This effect isn't once per turn either, nor does it target, but you can't banish monsters with the same attribute as a link monster is banished. To further establish the card's dominance, your opponent can't activate cards or effects in response to this card's effects. The card also just needs 2+ effect monsters to be summoned, making it generic support for every deck. Matches are guaranteed to end when this monster is summoned, with your opponent having almost no way of stopping it from clearing their board. This made it the go-to option over Borrelsword Dragon, as even though most Spell Speed 4 cards couldn't respond to both of their effects, Access Code cost fewer materials to summon, could clear where your opponent's born with its pop effect, and didn't require you to have a monster on the field to gain attack power. This card only makes it number 5 on this list due to its effect not quite being full-on protection. Though you couldn't respond directly to its effect activations, you can still just wait for its effect to resolve to start a new chain to attempt to remove Access Code from the field. Also, its protection won't stop it from cards that just negate its summon, like Solemn Strike or Solemn Judgment. However, this doesn't really take away from it being one of the game's most played extra deck monsters. Expect Accesscode Talker to continue seeing play and maybe even move up this list as one of the best dark monsters ever. And at number 4, we have True King of all Calamities. This Wormexes monster has 3000 attack and defense, and takes 2 level 9 monsters to make. It has a quick effect that allows you to detach a material to declare an attribute, and then every monster in the field becomes a declared attribute. Then, monsters on your opponent's side of the field with a declared attribute can't activate their effects or attack. This Floodgate also happened to work on monsters in the graveyard or hand if they happen to share that declared attribute, effectively shutting down your opponent's play for the turn if you called an attribute they used, or just on all plays of the board if not. However, decks like True Draco or True Kings didn't make it the monster we'd grow to fear seeing. Decks like True King Dinos and Virtual Worlds were way better at bringing the card out. True King Dinos would summon this card using a combo with True King Lithosigim the Disaster, who easily summoned itself by popping cards like Baby Ceratosaurus, and then summoning a level 9 dinosaur off of cards such as Double Evolution Pill to bring out the level 9 dino, Jurak Titano, to then Xe summon True King of all Calamities alongside a board containing cards like Evil Sword Logia for an Omni Negate. However, Virtual World would be a match made in heaven for the King of Calamities, as the deck prioritized Synchros and Xyz using level 3 and level 6 monsters. They could easily make True King of all Calamities by just reducing Shen with the effect of Shoosh, playing a level 3 tuner, and then going to Cloud Castle. Cloud Castle lets you target level 9 monster in your graveyard, which would be your Shen in this case, and then special summon it back to the field to make Calamities. Virtual World could make plays like this very easily happen on their first turn, which meant it would be a rough time for whoever had to play against the 3000 attack Xyz. The card's effects were also live even if it left the field, making attempting to pop the card meaningless, as the effect would continue until the end of the turn. The ability to turn off your opponent's board at any time proved too suppressive to the game. The frightening fact that a deck could place it on the field easily turn 1 on top of other disruptions was more than enough reason to pop it on the ban list. And at number 3, we have Tearlament's Kitkallos. This level 5 Aqua Dark Fusion monster needs no introduction in today's game. This card did it all for Tearlaments. On summon, it could search for any Tearlament card and add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Once per turn, you could target a monster you control, special summon a Tearlament's monster from your hand or graveyard, and then send the selected card to the graveyard, which usually would be Kitkallos herself, since when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to mill 5 cards. Kitkallos was one of the main reasons why the deck hit Tier 0 status. The ability to search any Tearlament, be it monster, spell, or trap, and its ability to pop itself to start a mill made it easy to get Tearlaments to the grave to trigger their effects and extend your plays. In combination with special summoning merely with its effect and Kitkallos popping itself, it was a guaranteed 8-card mill from your deck, furthering your chances of having Tearlament names in your graveyard for your other plays. Another main factor why Kitkallos was amazing is how easy it was to make. Simply by playing Rhinoheart and using his effect to send any Tearlament monster to your graveyard, like a Havness, then use Havness's effect to fusion summon Kitkallos with it in Rhinoheart. If that doesn't work, you could always just luck sack the instant fusion since Kitkallos is level 5 and bypasses the chances of Rhinoheart getting hit with a hand trap. To sweeten the pot even further, Tearlaments played the Ishizu cards in the main deck as well. They allowed you to return cards from either graveyard back to the deck, or mill cards from either player's deck if they were sent to the graveyard. So not only could you mill with the Tearlament monsters live with Kitkallos, but essentially gain the effects of these crazy Earth Fairy monsters. It came to a point where you had to have cards in your deck built to stop Tearlaments, leading to players stacking in Bestial monsters to remove critical pieces that Tearlaments need in their combos in an attempt to slow them down. Currently, Kitkallos is spending time on the ban list, but even that hasn't stopped tier limits from being playable throughout the hits they've taken. Nonetheless, Kitkallos takes number 3 as the deck's strongest enabler and easy accessibility in a deck that terrorized the format. The only weakness this card had was based on the skill set of the players running the deck. And at number 2, we have Stein, a card so nice it got banned twice. Stein has been a dominant card since 2004, with one of the simplest effects in the game. Just like Verde Anaconda, this card lets you special summon a fusion monster, but the only condition for Stein was that you would lose 5,000 life points to special summon almost any fusion. Until it was put on the emergency forbidden list on December 26, 2006, this card was splashed in every single deck if you had Stein. The ability to tune out any fusion monster in a format where there was nearly no way to negate the monster from bringing out a fusion monster was immense. This card even had an inspiring, though inconsistent, OTK involving Cyber and Dragon and Megamorph. This card would stay on the ban list until January of 2019. The belief that in a format where hand traps were abundant and the establishment of going first and second turn decks made it safe enough to bring the card back. Many believed it would turn players off from summoning Stein because it was just simply unsearchable, even if the life point cost didn't really matter still. You could pay 5,000 life points to have Stein summon a card like Nature Exterior to protect your place from your opponent's spells and trap cards, or just Last Word from Another Planet to prevent your opponent from special summoning. The most egregious abuse of the card was sprites. Stein being level 2 meant it could be sent to the graveyard with Sprint and then brought back with Sprite Elf, and then be brought back to one of the zones it was pointing to so it'd be untargetable by cards like Effect Veiler. Even decks like Spriggans and Super Heavy Samurais could easily access this card, as both can go into Gear Gigant X and fetch it without even a normal summon. Ultimately, bringing this card back off the list was poor judgment, so let's pray Konami doesn't allow this menace off the list for a third time. And finally, at number 1, we have Summon Sorceress. This generic Link 3 spellcaster allowed you to special summon a monster from your hand to a zone this card pointed to on your opponent's side of the field. And additionally, you could target any card it points to in order to special summon another monster from your deck with the same type as that monster, but its effect would be negated. Now, this card would let you fetch any monster from your deck as long as it just matches the type as one of the monsters it's pointing to. Cards like MX Saber Invoker, A Hero Lives, and even Christian Halki Fibrax had at least some restrictions on what monsters could be brought out, or what you could do with them. And even they couldn't survive meeting the ban list, whether limited or often dropped on the forbidden list. The effect negation also didn't hinder most decks that played Summon Sorceress, as this card could fetch you whatever monster you needed to help you finish your board, more specifically floaters for searching. A deck like ABC, Goki, or Phantom Knights have monsters whose effects are activated when being sent to the graveyard. Players could use Summon Sorceress' effect to special summon their floaters from their deck, and then simply link the monsters off to get their effects, as Summon Sorceress can't negate their graveyard effects. So not only were you rewarded with a new monster for your combo with Sorceress, but you also went plus from getting the effect of your floaters off. Summon Sorceress enables this type of play, and it was no surprise when the card was placed in Forbidden List for its busted effects. Being able to summon key pieces from your deck with a meaningless restriction through a monster that took little to no investment is unhealthy for any format of Yu-Gi-Oh! That, however, doesn't take away from Summon Sorceress' impact on the game, and it truly shows why it deserves a spot at number 1 on this list, as this card was definitely made broken on purpose to push links during Master Rule 4. Alright, and that's the list. Do you know of any other dark monsters you may have missed, or have any ideas for future videos similar to this one? If so, let us know down in the comments below.